Test one, two, test one, two. Test one, two, test one, two. Test one, two, test one, two. Yeah. Test one, two. Test one, two, test one, two. Test one, two, test one. There's your good friend. Test one, two. Test one, two. It's okay.
Testing.
Do it again.
Testing. One. Test. Test.
Okay, you know.
Excuse me, may I ask everybody to please take a seat? We're going to begin in a moment. If you have a cell phone or anybody should still carry a pager, please make sure they're all silenced. Thank you very much.
In our time of grief, we seek comfort from our ancient psalms of our tradition. Yavo Ezri, Ezri meim Adonai, Ose Shamayim Va'aretz, Yai-lai-lai, Yai-lai. I lift my eyes up to the hills. From where does my help come? From you, Adonai, creator of heaven and earth.
Harry served in the United States Navy from 1944 to 1948. We welcome the Honor Guard into the sanctuary. Death has taken our beloved Harry. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their tears, there's loneliness. Lost at this time as Harry's soul ascends to God who gave it. Our hearts reach out to his family and his friends who are bereaved, who are heartbroken at such a great loss, and indeed to our entire community. For even beyond his family, he was a pillar for so many of us and a role model. We ask God's blessing upon the mourners. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Harry's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and are now a part of our precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, bino deshi arbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi shovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo ira ra, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hemi yenachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai sholchan neged sororai, dishantav Hashem en roshi, kosi ravaya, ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. Those words were written by another young, brilliant Jewish man 3,000 years ago, who would also become the leader of his community. He became the king of Israel, David. But when he wrote these words, when he wrote the words that I spoke, he was afraid. He felt he was walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and yet he felt that his cup was overflowing. And certainly we must feel that way today. With the sadness of Harry's death, there is so much joy in the remembrance of who he was and what he meant to so many of us. I invite any of you who know these English words to join me out loud. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. From the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, for everything there is a season, and a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, time to keep silence and a time to speak. Those words remind us of the cycle of life. Traditionally, they were written by King Solomon at the end of his life. And he reminds us that life is a cycle. And we usually focus on the dancing and the laughter, but it is in the weeping and the grieving that the blessings of life truly emerge. Because it is at this moment we see this life very well lived, this wonderful life, and we learn the essence of what life means by looking at Harry's life, at the values that he cherished and lived, the way he communicated his soul to us, that soul that God gave him, and that he used so wonderfully in his life. As we're speaking words, a few will say words, but each of us has memories, and I hope that during the Shiva that you'll share some of those memories with the mourners and let them know of your life experiences with Harry B. Smith and what he meant to you. And so I'd like to begin this process by asking his 3 children to please come forward and to say some words about their father.
Jed is going to speak for me.
My dad was a quiet man who didn't mind being in the background while he did. He didn't mind that others enjoyed or needed to be the shiny coin. It was about the deed, not the person always. He didn't need to articulate this. It was given and demonstrated daily through his grueling work ethic and philanthropy. MTE, make the effort, was one of the mottos in the Smith home. He was steadfast in his loyalty to his friends, family and causes. Before the Six-Day War of 1967, my parents had bought a longed-for lot on Palm Island on the water and had plans drawn up for a new, much larger and luxurious home. We were all so excited. After the war, the lot was sold to give money to Israel. He demonstrated his commitment to his values over and over again. He believed in walking the walk. So, in my father's steely quietness, commitment to his law practice, the synagogue, Israel, and beloved football, it was a tall order to grow up with. I often thought that he just checked out of all else that he wasn't interested in. What I came to learn was more true, was that he was enormously kind. He never wanted to see another person upset by something he said or did. This kindness was not about being a yes man, though. The depth of his character came to the surface one Yom Kippur in a very personal way when I was in high school. At that time, I didn't believe in God and didn't want to go to synagogue when my friends were going to the beach. We had a rare argument which led to him writing a letter to me. In the letter, he searched his soul and was vulnerable and transparent in a way that I had rarely experienced. He shared that he was not sure of his belief in God and of having a particularly meaningful experience going to synagogue. His non-permission to my request wasn't about status in the community and people seeing me. My suggestion for his not permitting my beach excursion. He believed in the unity, community, and respect of fellow Jews, and the importance of supporting community, especially knowing that at other times in history, this has not been an option for Jews. He accomplished a lot in this exchange with me. I understood the power of community and sacrifice in a more nuanced, personal, and powerful way. Unbeknownst to me, this exchange with my father also set in motion a legacy for parenting that I've always strived towards, that of transparency, listening, reflecting, and then responding. Although I knew I was loved by him, it was when he entered the phase of grandparenting that his sweetness and softness was apparent. I loved the relationship that he and Joan developed and nurtured with Marissa and Jed. He and Joan thrived in these roles, and in turn, we all thrived, moving closer in connection. They co-created a Thanksgiving tradition, coming to New York City, bringing the kids to the Macy's Day Parade, and having the longed-for long weekend with us on our turf, until it wasn't possible to travel. As my father worked less, aged, and became ill, he taught me about dignity, appreciation, gratitude, perseverance, and love. He made the effort until his last breath.
That was my beloved son, Jed.
I want to thank everyone for your outpouring of love for Harry B. and our family. We're truly humbled by your kindness and generosity. How can you measure the life of one man, my dad, a true mensch, our gentle giant, Harry B.? My dad came from modest beginnings. He was a part of the greatest generation, was an old school gentleman, upholding the highest standards of honesty, integrity, and generosity, no matter who you were. His word was his bond. He was a consummate mentor and role model for so many of us. Quite frankly, he was doing the pay it forward thing way before its time. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos teaches us that there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of Kehunah, priesthood, and the crown of kingship. But the crown of a good name rises above them all. I'm sure everyone would agree with me that Harry B. Smith wore the crown of a good name. He wore it with humility, class, without ego, nor compromise. As his son, these were huge shoes to even contemplate stepping into, let alone emulating. But the beauty of my dad was that he never really demanded anything of us. He just led by example, keeping his head down, grinding it out, and hoping we might follow or at least set our own unique course for success. As a result, we, the descendants of Harry B., are honored to carry forth the legacy of his good name. I hope and pray that we have and will continue to make him proud. As a kid, my dad was always present in my life, though he never touched a diaper. He turned me on to the love of black licorice, every war movie ever made, and our joint passion for Hurricane football games, which continued for over 50 years through this season. And many of you might have seen the seat that his Fanny sat on for 50 years from the Orange Bowl that was displayed out there in a box. He picked me up every day at Flamingo Park, where I learned to play tennis. He came to all of my sporting events and school functions. Holidays and parties with large groups of friends were plentiful in the Smith household on Hibiscus Island, where us kids were given lots of independence to explore, fail, and to just figure it out. It wasn't until I was older that I became aware of his second life, that of an icon professionally and communally. A relentless advocate for Jewish and community causes, which I experienced firsthand when he used our family savings to trade in the elusive 16-foot Boston Whaler to give as an emergency gift of tzedakah to Israel during the Six-Day War. It wasn't just the lot, there was a boat also. I now saw firsthand and began to understand the art of giving in the Smith household. My mom and dad always stressed education and somehow convinced me to leave the comforts of Beach High to go to Ransom Everglades after 10th grade. I believe he expertly persuaded me, bribed, with his old chocolate brown Chevy Monte Carlo with a sleek two-toned roof. They knew that an enhanced education setting would serve me well. Dad's persuasive side kicked in again when he schooled my football coach for benching me for missing the first half of the game because of my brother's bar mitzvah. That was truly not a good idea by that coach. Once again, Harry B. went into action, and it was quite a sight to see. He always had our backs and those of others when just causes were at stake. As time passed and Lori and I and my siblings had our families, the true new love of his life kicked in, his grandkids. He and Joan, with their crazy busy schedules, were always present front and center to offer unconditional love and support to us and our children. Sporting events, dance recitals, vocal concerts, school functions, Disney trips, Aspen, they were always present. His love for his 8 grandchildren was overflowing till his last breath. 3.5 years ago, on Dad's 88th birthday, he had a mini stroke and we almost lost him. His ensuing world was significantly disrupted. No more practicing law, no more driving, days filled with doctor's appointments, and a sleek walker for mobility, etc. But he never complained. He just adjusted and always found the good in every day and every person in his orbit. Our gentle giant refused to slow down, and Joan refused to let his world shrink. We had so many amazing times and memories during those final years, including his 90th birthday bash. So many of you were there, and I'm sure you would agree that it was truly a remarkable evening. I feel so blessed to have had that extra time with him and our families. We even went to the Orange Bowl game to see our beloved U play this past December 30th. Not a great outcome, but still a good time. I really want to thank Joan for her amazing care of Dad and her love toward all of us during these difficult 3.5 years. Your love affair with Dad was a beautiful thing to watch and be a part of these past 31 years, Joan. He surely hit the jackpot with you and with my mom. A few weeks after the stroke, on September 8th, 2014, when we were at our lowest point, I wrote this poem called The Gentle Giant. I appreciate you allowing me to share it with you all. A giant life lived by doing no wrong. His moral compass radiates so strong. A smile, nod, and he killed you with kindness. The gentle way of Harry B. is timeless. Now the giant has taken a mighty fall, though his gentle engine will never stall. Circumstances so volatile, yet he's focused on our feelings, lifting us up even though we're reeling. The gentle giant forges ahead, his bucket list checked off, and nothing left unsaid. Thank you, Dad, Harry B., our gentle giant, for all that you have given us. Rest in peace. I will miss you more than you can ever imagine. Life well lived. I love you, pal.
I have something prepared, but I received an email earlier this morning that I'd like to go off script and share with everybody, if you don't mind. So, sorry for pulling out my phone, but the reason I think it's appropriate is this is from my friend Bruce. We grew up here together. We learned Aleph Bet with Shula Ben David here, Bar Mitzvah here, just everything, all of my childhood memories, and so many of you who know this place forever. We graduated high school together. It's a long story, but this is with permission from Bruce Menon, my old friend, and actually he grew up on Sheridan, not too far, almost directly across the street from where I'm raising my family. Jill and I are raising our kids now. David, your dad was the first truly sophisticated, intelligent, worldly, and elegant man I ever met. And he inspired me to be like him from when I was a very, very young boy. His closet was precise, that's true. And my shirts are aligned now, just like his. More importantly, his thinking and focus were of a rare kind not found in Miami too much at that time. It made a difference to me. I regret not seeing him more recently, but his memory is strong and vibrant in my mind. My sincere condolences to you and your family. The reason I wanted to go off script to read that is, first of all, it's really true. You never saw such a closet in your life. I mean, it was just the whites and the beiges and the light blues and the dark blues and the pinks. It was just unbelievable. And frequently never even out of the wrapper in some instances. But the reason I wanted to share this is because it involves an old friend. We go back 50 years, Bruce and I, and just seeing everybody, greeting everybody, to see the Zayak family, to see I can't even know where to begin. So I'm sorry, but just the what this place means to our family and what it meant to my dad. So forgive me for digressing, but I just couldn't start my thoughts without first sharing that. Good afternoon, and thank you, all of you, for being here today to remember and to pay tribute to my dad. Harry Smith, Tzvi ben Yosef Halevi, Zichron Labracha. A wonderful human being, a real mensch, a righteous but never self-righteous man who lived a productive, purposeful, meaningful, love-filled life. I've always felt and always will feel that Dad's goodness was his true greatness. It's so surprising just how much memory is shaped by and built around things that go unnoticed at the time when they happen. As I reflect upon Dad's 91 years and my 54 years of life experience as his son, 5 clear themes emerge. Number 1, first and foremost, gratitude. Number 2, study hard and work harder. Number 3, love humanity. Number 4, love of and service to and on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. And finally, number 5, love of and loyalty to family and friends. Number 1, gratitude. As a child of the Great Depression, Dad was always so very grateful that his service during World War II meant that thanks to the GI Bill, he didn't have to go into the shoe business. He could study law and then spend the next 60-plus years of his life totally committed to a profession that he found both engaging and noble. Dad never made a fortune practicing law, but he provided us with a magical childhood, never sparing any expense, especially when it came to our education. He mentored so many people, many of whom I got to greet with a big smile and a big hug earlier this morning before the service started. So he enjoyed the great reputation and the good name, as Joey referenced, the Baal Shem Tov, that comes with never being compromised or conflicted. In my dad's case, his gratitude coupled with his humility yielded a profound integrity, admired by his clients and his colleagues. Number 2, study hard and work harder. My dad was convinced that what he lacked in raw talent, he could achieve with an exemplary work ethic. While attending UM Law School, Dad was the night watchman at the old Miami Beach Public Library. This way he could brief his cases while earning enough money to pay his parents' rent. Where he shared the pull-out living room couch with his baby brother and future law partner Samuel Smith. My beloved Uncle Sam of blessed memory. Sorry, I'm a little verklempt. Dad's work ethic was and still is that which most inspires me, to always push forward and push harder, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the challenges, no matter what the obstacles. Love of humanity. I'm sure everybody here, almost everybody here, remembers Dora. This is about her, but it so exemplifies just the kind of incredible man she was. Dora was a Southern Baptist woman who spent 32 years working with us. Really, it was more than she raised us along with our parents in our Hibiscus Island home. When Dora arrived, she was illiterate. My parents couldn't fathom that, but they really liked her, so the deal was simple. You're hired as long as you allow us to pay for you to go to night school, to learn how to read and write. You just have to show up and do your best. Years later, I would come home from school, and Dora would be reading the Miami Herald and then, as you probably remember, the old Miami News, the afternoon paper. She'd be reading it cover to cover, and she would always find a way to finish the ironing and still finish the crossword puzzle with the help of Webster's pocketbook dictionary. Over time, Dora became quite a Bible scholar in both the Old and New Testaments, and over time, my dad saw fit to make the down payment that enabled Dora and her husband to become homeowners. Dad also made sure to pay into Social Security for her on her behalf so that one day she'd be able to retire. That was pretty rare treatment of the help back in those days, and really treated her like family, and she became family to us. I've heard it said that you can judge great people by what they do when no one is looking, when no one is watching. No one was watching then, but Luann, Joey, and I, we knew what was going on. And the impact on us was and still is profound beyond measure. Love of Israel and love of the Jewish people. Number 4, in my home, every dinner conversation that wasn't about homework was about Jewish communal challenges and opportunities, both here in South Florida and in the state of Israel. I'm glad that the honor guard showed how Dad loved being an American, and he really was proud to be an American and the opportunities created in this country. But his truest love was for Israel. He just felt that having fought in the war, that if we would have had an Israel, it would have been a different outcome back then. And he just drilled it into us that there's nothing more important. Who you vote for is only about how that politician is going to treat the state of Israel. So it's just an interesting lesson for us. Every upcoming trip out of the country was only to one country, Israel, typically on a federation mission, which many of you went on with my dad, with my parents, and with Joan as well. After one such trip, we learned that our family had adopted a young Israeli orphan who needed money for food and clothes and her education. So no, we would not be getting increases in our allowances. There were higher priorities out there, even sometimes, especially with and among total strangers. When Dad was president of our Greater Miami Jewish Federation, he constantly was worrying and wondering how 4,200 could do more to meet the needs of those in need. From young parents who needed diapers and baby formula, to indigent elderly who needed burial plots, to everything and everyone in between. Many years later, Dad put his heart and soul into helping establish our magnificent Miami Beach Holocaust Memorial. His integrity, his kindness, and perhaps most of all, his consensus building served him so well in and with this most sacred work that really defined the last chapter of his life as a community servant. Number 5, love and loyalty. I saw my dad love and lose frequently. I saw him lose my mom. I saw him love and lose dear friends like Mort Silberman and Sam Adler, his old partner Bernie Mandler, Bennett Lifter, and both Lenny Millers, to name just a few. I don't believe he ever fully recovered from the loss of his brother Sam, but he invested all of that passion into his grandchildren and to his beautiful relationship and love affair with Joan. And she returned his love and kindness with a devotion and sensitivity and caring that I will for the rest of my life acknowledge with profound hakaras hatov, a gratitude for which there are no words. Dad died early Shabbat morning, on the Shabbat in which we first encountered the 10 Commandments. Since Dad was a very righteous but not a particularly observant Jew, at least not in the more traditional sense of the word, I'd like to offer the Harry B. Smith 10 Commandments version. Number 1, live with gratitude. 2, choose kindness. 3, study hard. 4, work harder. 5, love your family. 6, enjoy your friends. 7, engage with and serve your community. 8, celebrate your Jewish values and your Jewish pride. 9, be loyal to all, and especially to Israel. And finally, number 10, stay humble. How does one define success? As my dear friend Ricky once said at the marriage of one of his daughters, our tradition teaches us that the day of death is greater than the day of birth. Why? Because birth only represents potential. whereas death allows us to connect the dots backwards, to see what we did to actualize the potential we had when we entered this world. If the actualization of one's potential is the measure of success, then Harry B. Smith was a huge success. Dad was an uncomplicated but very thoughtful man who enjoyed hard work and who thrived by keeping things both simple and actionable. He was a gentle man who cared deeply and who never got angry. At least I never saw him get angry, even when I overslept for the SATs. Dad, please accept my gratitude for your enduring love and kindness, and for the love you showed my children and Jill, and for adoring your grandchildren so much. Please give me mechila. Please forgive me for anything I may have done, however inadvertently, to cause you pain or distress. And know for sure that I will spend the rest of my days emulating you, trying to do you proud, and trying to give your sweet neshama, your gentle, holy soul, a much-deserved, well-earned aliyah. I will forever cherish the special father-son love that we shared. And for sure, I will miss you more than I dare imagine. I love you, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you all. Beautiful tribute. In December, when it was announced that Rabbi Gail Pomerantz would succeed me as the senior rabbi of the congregation, Harry wrote a letter to Rabbi Pomerantz because he wanted to congratulate her, but he also wanted to convey the history of his family and this congregation. And he talked about Louis Krensky, his father-in-law, who was the second chairman of the board of this congregation, Inez Krensky, whom I was privileged to know for a number of years, who was president of the sisterhood. As you heard from David, the 3 children that were bar and bat mitzvahed here. Marilyn was confirmed here. And he always felt that sense, and it's true, it was not about faith, it was about community. This was his community where he and his family grew up. He talked about Rabbi Kronish, Cantor Sam Kellemer in the 1950s, who officiated with Rabbi Kronish at his first wedding. And he talked about, with pride, how he was given our first annual Community Service Award here at Temple in 1994. He cared deeply, always, about those places that touched his heart, and he remained loyal always to them. And I think a big part of that was because he wanted to convey the values that mattered most to him, and I know his children and his grandchildren have felt that. And I want to ask his grandchildren now to come and share a few thoughts, a few memories. If you would all come forward.
From an early age, I knew that being the grandson of Harry B. Smith was something very special. Mainly because everywhere I went with him, we ran into people who would proceed to tell me how great he was, and he would shake his head and deny it, but I could see the look in their eyes and knew that it was true. From Miami Hurricanes football games to Jewish community events, this would always happen everywhere I went with him. People can talk about all of the incredible accomplishments my Grandpa Harry achieved and the titles and awards given to him for just hours, president of this, on the board of that, founding member of this. All of his accomplishments and achievements are an incredible testament to his character and desire to serve his community. However, that's not what I'll remember. I'll remember his unconditional love as a grandfather to me and to all of his grandchildren. I'll remember how he was an incredible role model to me. Who knows if I'd be an attorney if my Grandpa Harry wasn't one? Probably not. I went to law school knowing nothing about the practice of law, other than the fact that the biggest role model I had in my life had chosen it for his career. So under my logic, if my Grandpa Harry was an attorney, then it had to be a worthwhile pursuit to dedicate one's professional life to. I'll remember all of the Miami Hurricane football games I enjoyed with him as I grew up. I'd watch every home game with him every Saturday, and I'll remember all the car rides with me and him over to the Old Orange Bowl, where we spoke about life and the world and, of course, our predictions for the game. I'll also remember the important lessons that he taught me. Never by lecture, always by example. I don't want to keep you here all day, so I'll just talk about the top 5 lessons that, over the years of observing my grandfather's actions, I've written down and tried to follow through my life with the best. Be kind to everyone you meet with and interact with. My Grandpa Harry treated everyone with kindness, no matter who they were or what their situation. Give 100% of your efforts to everything that you do and never quit or give up, ever. My Grandpa Harry's work ethic is legendary, and during law school and now working at my law firm, whenever I'm tired or want to give minimum effort, I motivate myself by thinking, WWGHD, what would Grandpa Harry do? Be completely honest and ethical in everything you do. In all my years spent with my grandpa, I never observed a single dishonest or unethical thing. It got to the point where I was just waiting for him to do something that would bring him down to the level of a normal human being. It never happened. I never once saw my Grandpa Harry lie or act in any unethical way ever, even in situations where I clearly would have or most people would have. Always be humble. My Grandpa Harry never wanted to take credit for any of his accomplishments or deeds, whenever I or anyone else brought them up or tried to attribute them to him. And finally, always act like a gentleman and treat everyone you meet with dignity and respect, especially people in a lower station than you. My Grandpa Harry was the consummate gentleman, and he would treat the CEO the same way as he'd treat a busboy at a restaurant. These are the most important lessons I learned from my Grandpa Harry. My grandpa often said that a person only has his or her reputation, and that is a legacy they leave behind. My grandfather, Harry B. Smith, leaves behind an impeccable reputation, an incredible legacy that will be remembered and carried on by his family, friends, and community. I loved him so much. I'm going to miss him so much. I hope to make him proud by carrying on and passing on the lessons that I learned from him. I love you, Grandpa.
So I have something to read on behalf of my sister, who is in Israel right now, so isn't able to be here in person, but she is watching the live stream right now. So I hope I can convey your words as you wrote them. So there are many things Grandpa Harry was known for. One of them was that he was not the biggest fan of eating vegetables. I grew up hearing story after story of my grandma Marilyn making Brussels sprouts or spinach or peas for dinner. And every evening, without a doubt, by some stroke of fate, Grandpa Harry had it for lunch. Of course he had it. He'd likely had a cheeseburger. But he wanted to put on a good act in order to not dissuade his children from eating what was presumably good for them. That being said, it wasn't exactly a shock to me that he wasn't thrilled with my profession of choice, being a vegetable farmer. For me to dedicate so much of my life to growing foods that he didn't eat or value didn't make much sense to him. Everyone needs a lawyer at some point in their life, but if you don't eat vegetables, then it's easy to conclude who needs a vegetable farmer. As time went on, the questions evolved from, why do you want to do this? To, does it make you happy? Once he realized how happy farming made me, there was no turning back for Grandpa Harry. He wanted to know everything. A couple years ago, Grandpa Harry, Grandma Joan, and I went grocery shopping together. My grandma left the two of us to hang out near the entrance while she picked up what she needed. Grandpa Harry strangely slowly drifted to the produce aisle, so I of course followed. He then proceeded to point to every single vegetable, ask me what it was, as if he had never seen any of them before. If I grow it, how I grow it, if I like it, and so on. Everyone always said that my grandpa was quite the interviewer, and it was definitely true. Once he got on board, he was really on board, and the questions never ended. When was I going to start my own farm? Was I ever going to use my graduation gift towards buying property to start my own farm? How was my business plan coming along? And was there anything he could offer to help? Even late in his life, my grandpa was open-minded and curious, showing great pride and admiration for whatever passions his family had. And thanks to my Grandma Joan, he even started to eat some vegetables.
Thank you for those beautiful, touching words. Matt said about his humility, and it was clear that that was who Harry was. And I want to read to you one of his favorite poems that he liked to quote. And he quoted it often in many different settings. It's called The Indispensable Man. Sometime when you're feeling important, sometime when your ego's in bloom, sometime when you take it for granted you're the best qualified in the room, sometime when you feel that your going would leave an unfillable hole, just follow these simple instructions and see how they humble your soul. Take a bucket and fill it with water. Put your hand in it up to the wrist. Pull it out, and the hole that's remaining is a measure of how you'll be missed. You can splash all you wish when you enter. You may stir up the water galore, but stop and you'll find that in no time it looks quite the same as before. The moral of this quaint example is do just the best that you can. Be proud of yourself, but remember, there's no indispensable man. He believed that. He lived that, even though, in many ways, he would have been the model of an indispensable man. And so now, I'm going to ask our cantor Siegel, to sing a song, because we're about to turn to a couple of friends, and this goes back to World War II. It was written by Hannah Senesh, who was a Jewish freedom fighter, Palestinian Jewish freedom fighter, who was parachuted behind enemy Nazi lines and who died. She was betrayed and tortured, and she and her comrades were killed. But she left behind beautiful poems. This one is called Yesh Kochavim, where she says there are stars that illuminate the darkest night, and certainly Harry was one of those stars.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though the time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember as we live our days. we remember. יש כוכבים שאמרם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ואינם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות לב המאביקים בחשכת הליל. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember, we remember. שמרים לאדם את הדרך, את הדרך. We remember, we remember.
David, if you would come forward. David Schechter.
Please allow me to tell you about my forever friend, Hershey B. Smith. Actually, he was the second person that I met in Miami 63 years ago. Usually speaking, we have all kinds of minhaks, all kinds of traditions. And one of them is called the Tree of Life, Eitz Chaim. And we deem it as our most precious possession. Each branch on that tree is a member of our family. Before the Holocaust, my family tree of life had 105 branches, 105 names. And at the beginning of 1945, there was only one branch. I vividly remember telling Herschel of that. And Herschel listened. And he said to me, David, let's go ahead and plant another tree. For both our families. Hershey and I became close friends. We were involved in Jewish life in this blessed community called Miami. Hershey and I traveled, and we traveled a lot. And Hershey and I went to Europe to find some remnants of the Holocaust. We went to Auschwitz. We went to Birkenau. There was one other person from Miami, a couple of other people. A guy by the name of Donnie Lefton was in our group. And of blessed memory, Mike Brody, our Jewish leader of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Our families were Marilyn Krinsky, Smith was with Hershey. Of blessed memory, Marvis Blossom Schachter was in that group. Hershey was so many things. God Almighty, he was so much. But the most important of all things, Jonah and the Smith children, Hershey was the epitome of a human being. Hershey. And he loved it when I called him Hershey. He was spearheaded. He undertook a responsibility of helping us create a Holocaust memorial on Miami Beach. Hershey was able to harness the genius of Kenny Treaster, the caring of Norman Brayman, we went ahead. Hershey surrounded himself with people who cared about our people, about our community, about Israel. The people that were attracted to respond to building this Holocaust memorial. And might I tell you that there's nothing like it in this whole wide world as our memorial here on Miami Beach. He attracted people like Rabbi Saul Schiff. He attracted a son of a Holocaust survivor, Ezra Katz. He attracted a man by the name of Abe Resnick, a Holocaust survivor. He attracted, of blessed memory, a man by the name of Jack Chester, a blessed human being of blessed memory. He attracted a man by the name of George Goldblum. And he attracted a man, a survivor, by the name of Selig Golan. I and my family are eternally grateful for having been part of the life of Herschel B. Smith. He has deeply touched this whole Jewish world, but he has touched me. And I will forever and ever remember.
Finally, I'd like to ask another member of that group, Donnie Lefton, to come forward and to speak of his friend Harry.
My dear Joni, Lou-Ann, Joey, David, spouses, grandchildren, family, and friends, I thank you for requesting that I speak at this sad occasion of the passing of my dear friend, Harry B. Smith. Please know how difficult it is to try and crowd into a few minutes a relationship that began 45 years ago. He was far more than a friend. He was a confidant, a mentor, a soulmate, all rolled into one. So please bear with me as I ramble a bit about a man called Herschel, who I truly loved from the bottom of my heart, as I try to convey the deep sense of loss that I feel today and will feel even more deeply in the years ahead. So at this time, I would like to not to mourn Harry's death as much as to celebrate his life. You see, people have a tendency to magnify one after their death. Harry needed no such magnification. His prominence and success was achieved not necessarily by monumental deeds to our local Jewish community and to others around the world. And yet, on top of it all, he was kind and caring and gentle, with an unselfish devotion and compassion for his fellow man. So I stand here now, countless images drawn from shared experiences crowd my memory, blushing out, at least for the moment, the deep sense of loss that we all feel. I think of the words spoken by Adlai Stevenson upon the death of Eleanor Roosevelt, when he said, "I have lost more than a friend. I have lost an inspiration." You see, my first introduction to Israel and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation was at Harry's house in 1972, just prior to departing for our community's first mission to Israel. And it was there, in Israel, on a small plane ride, when he looked at me and said, "Donnie, I feel sorry for you, because as a result of this trip, your life has changed, and you will never be the same." And some years later, we both sat on the steps across from the Western Wall when we were both single and bemoaned our lives and our future. Little did we know how fortunate we would be with our new mates for the next 25 or 31 years. Then on a cold, early morning, again on a mission to Prague, we flew in a small Piper Cub plane with David and Marva Schechter to retrace David's early life in a small town deep into Czechoslovakia called Ubla. And before the war, David was able to retrace his life as Harry and mine were, as we were so inextricably entwined with one another. And then trips to concentration camps in Germany and Austria and Poland or Russia, or vacations to the Cape or elsewhere. And as I said goodbye to him at our annual party just a few days ago, I somehow knew I would never see him again. You see, Harry stands tall enough as a man of such qualities and unquestioned integrity, for to overly sanctify his memory would be to miss out on the very essence of his existence. His zest for life, his boundless energy, his unbelievable intensity, competitiveness, and determination in everything he did. He had no insatiable thirst for fame or fortune. He always knew who he was, what he was, where he had come from, and where he was going. Secure in his own self-esteem, he had no need to impress others or himself. And above all, he was a gentleman who had style and charm. He could walk into a room and converse with anybody regardless of their station in the world. He was a most unique and remarkable man. He was truly goodness personified. He was kind and caring to everyone, and as it has been said, he knew no class distinction. He never profaned anyone by words or deeds. He was sensitive to everyone's feelings and demonstrative with his own. He always had a kind word, a soothing demeanor, and a sympathetic assurance and understanding of a person's problems or challenges. He had a great sense of propriety and class, which he imparted to his family and friends. He is best known, however, for indulging his adoring wife and children and grandchildren. A truly unforgettable man who will be missed by all of those who were fortunate enough to know him during his life. Now, I know Harry is obviously looking down from the heavens above and saying, as he invariably did to me, Donnie, that's enough already. So I would like to conclude by thanking God for giving us the life of a man that I was so terribly proud to call my friend. This extraordinary and irreplaceable man whose kindness to others and whose love for his community will never be extinguished. You, Herschel, were an honor to your family and friends, and an extraordinary leader of our people, and a credit and model to your race, the human race. As William Shakespeare once said about a person like Harry, his life was so gentle and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, This was a man. So goodbye, my dear friend. We will miss you deeply.
Thank you, Donnie. David. There's a blessing in our tradition that says, Baruch atah b'voecha, Baruch atah b'tzetecha. May you be blessed when you come. May you be blessed when you go. Harry B. Smith was blessed because he felt blessed throughout his life. He was blessed by his life partners, Marilyn, Joan, and he was blessed by the devotion that Joan showed, as his children said, particularly in this last 10 years of his life and the last 3 years, and the details of being his advocate and making sure that he had a quality of life. Joan, everyone thanks you and appreciates that, giving us Harry longer than we could have expected. And even the last day, the last moments, he was blessed. On Friday, when I had heard that he had a heart attack, I called expecting to speak to Joan, and Harry got on the phone. Joan handed it to Harry. He wanted to speak, and it sounded exactly like Harry always sounded. And he said to me, I'm sorry I won't be able to be at your party on Saturday night. But have fun and have a great time, and mazel tov. Last hours of his life, he was thinking, he even remembered that I was having a celebration. And Rabbi Schiff came by, told him a joke. He was still fully in control, mentally, but his body was failing. And to show you how sharp he was at the end, we all know that David is Shomer Mitzvot, Shomer Shabbat. And when he went into crisis, the police knocked on David's door. David was there at his bedside with the other loving members of the family. Harry opened his eyes and said, "You drove?" Think about it. That he was at the very end of his life still conscious that it was Shabbat and that his son had come on Shabbat to be there with him. And the last words that he spoke to David were those, but the last words he said to Joan were the same words that he said every night before he kissed her goodnight. He said, "Sweet dreams, sweetheart, I love you." That is Baruch atah b'tzetecha, blessed when you go. And then he died on Shabbat. Last week, as he was entering this final phase, was Tu B'Shvat, when we focus on trees, and our tradition says that life passes as a shadow. And the rabbi said the best kind of shadow is a tree with a full canopy, because it gives shade all day. Wherever the sun is, there's always a place where you can find shade. Harry was like that. Harry was there always for us, all the time. And so I want to end this part of the service by reminding us of a blessing that's in the Talmud, which says that a man who was dying of thirst and hunger in the desert noticed in the distance a small, what seemed to be a small tree, and made his way to the tree, barely getting there. It was a large palm tree, actually, and there was fresh water at its base, and the palm tree gave dates, and the man refreshed himself in the water, ate the dates, sat in the shade of the tree, and was ready to go on his journey. And he turns to the tree and he says, "Oh tree, how can I bless you? I can't bless you with life-giving water. You have that. I can't bless you with beautiful fruit. You've refreshed me with your fruit. I can't bless you with shade, because your shade has given me new life. So I'll bless you this way. May all of the shoots that go forth from you be just like you. That's the greatest blessing that Harry receives. The shoots, his children, his grandchildren, his family, his community, his world can reflect who he was and be like him. And so that is the generation, Midor Lador, from one generation to the next. So I'd like to ask Jessica to come forward and to sing for her grandfather.
My grandpa always wanted to hear me sing. Came to every concert. Every time I would sing at temple, he came to listen to me. And this song, he's heard me sing for the past few years, and I think the words speak for itself. We are gifts, and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope, and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words, and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Lidor vador nagid galecha. Lidor vador, we protect this chain from generation to generation. Lidor vador, these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we carry in our heart, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that would part, we are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your way, and the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. Lidor vador nagid galecha. Lidor vador, we protect this chain from generation to Lidor vador, these lips will praise your name. I love you, Grandpa.
I'll ask those who can to please rise.
El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Hamsei Menuch Hanechona Tachat Kanafeh HaShekhinah Im Kedoshim Utohorim Kezohar Harakia Mazihirim Et Nishmat Tzvi Ben Yosef הלוי, שהלכה לעולמך, בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, וישרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Harry Bernard Smith, Tzvi ben Yosef Halevi, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And we say, Amen. Concluding the interment at Mount Nebo, the family will be returning to Jones' residence at 1 Grove Isle, and there they'll be sitting from 5 to 8 each evening tonight and tomorrow. There'll be a service at 6 p.m. each of those evenings. Beginning Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., David and Jill's home will have Shiva at 4538 Sheridan Avenue. We welcome all of those to come and comfort the mourners.
This concludes the services here in the sanctuary. May I ask everybody to please remain standing as the casket passes, follow behind. If you're not going to the cemetery, if you'll please go right to your cars after we exit the sanctuary. If you are going, high beams and flashers, take one of these orange placards, hangs from the mirror. We'll be lining up southbound here. The road here is Chase and 41st Street, which is the cross section to the south. And we will have motorcycle escorts to direct us. May I ask the grandchildren, if you'd like to help with the casket, just come forward, please. Thank you.
All you